We're starting today with Saint and Ola, both of which are, relatively speaking, new products, certainly from a US market perspective, brand new products, and ones where we're getting a massive amount of traffic in terms of front-end activity and inquiries at the moment through both website and face-to-face. So they're two that we need to crack on with and tick off quickly. Moving through the course of the next few weeks, we'll also then kind of go back to ground zero, if you like, and we'll talk about Boss as an upholstery business, our kind of core credentials as people who can cut, sew and upholster fabric and leather to a very high quality. And then we'll start working through the detail of the upholstery portfolio that we can offer. Kerry will be kind of collecting feedback on these sessions as we go. And are you recording this as well, Kerry?
I am recording this, absolutely. So okay. At the end of this, there'll be a full presentation that you will be going through that's going to be available for everyone. And obviously you'll be able to have this, this lovely recording as well.
Okay, and this kind of supplements a lot of what we talk about in these sessions. Will cross over with some of the designer insights that are on the website and some of the detail of the other pieces of collateral that are available. But it's one more piece to support you, and yeah, hopefully. Again, direct pieces of work, and also gives you a good foundation and understanding on the new product coming through. So we'll kind of we'll rattle through, if you like, on the kind of the background elements to this. But just to say that, you know, although we're deviating from our core competence on upholstery, really the craftsmanship is still something that is integral to every project that we take on. And for me, I don't consider there to be any real difference between you know, traditionally crafted timber frame and that of a high technology injection molded plastic part. There's a craftsmanship and an intelligence and an experience that goes into the manufacturing of every component that we do. In terms of the timeline, we'll work our way through that, as I say, when we cover the upholstery product in more detail. But really coming through to a series of products that we feel very excited about here, Ola, Saint, and then through DNA and into Paloma, which we think quite confidently will make up the mass majority of our sales over the course of the next couple of years. So, two monoshells, and not intentionally, but as I'll try and explain to you over the course of the next few minutes, I think with good reason for there to be. I've been with Boss now 16, coming on 17 years, and a good monoshell product was one of 3 products that I was tasked with developing when I started in the business. Now, yes, I can move that slowly, it's true, but it's a saturated market. So I suppose, you know, we don't want to do anything for the sake of just doing it. We want to only develop product that's appropriate at the time in which it comes through, and not to do anything which is just kind of is too much of a me too. It's got to be right, and therefore monoshell, whilst it kept bubbling away in the background, it never became a high enough priority for us to block out the kind of time and capital investment required to bring it to the fore. I can't think, you might argue task seating, you could definitely put a case forward for basic desking, but as far as kind of auxiliary seating is concerned, I can't think of another area of the furniture market that's as crowded, that's as saturated as the monoshell market. You know, there are, you know, almost literally 1,000,001 of these things out there. Every company that we compete with has something that does this. And of the 1,000,001 that are out there, there's 101 that are really pretty good examples of products. So we wanted to do something that was different, you know, aesthetically, that would be recognizable as the Boss Design chair, and something that would take all that had come before it and just kind of nudge it along to the next level and for the next generation. The thing that meant now was the time really was the movements in the market, you know, like from we can talk about kind of the COVID workplace a bit more in a minute, but the explosion of work cafe and hospitality area gaining greater and greater kind of square footage within the big workplace campuses that we're working on. Everybody's favorite place to meet is with a cup of coffee in their hand, and the need for that kind of work cafe product was getting greater and greater all the time. But at the same time, there was a kind of a continuing movement of the informality around the aesthetic of meeting chairs and of work chairs, to the point where there was a complete blurring of the boundary between what was traditionally a work cafe product and what actually could now be a really credible meeting chair series. So we had this idea that we could create, a truly multifunctional series of products where you could go all the way from one end, which is a plastic monoshell on a simple skid or four-leg steel frame, right the way across the markets to start dressing it up into different levels, putting it on different bases, introducing arms, introducing upholstery, and giving people something that was a really credible mechanism, height adjustable, mobile, and all of that could be done off a single shell series. So we wrote a brief and we ran it almost pitched it almost in competition form. So we drew up a short list of 16 names for interior designers, product designers that we had some dialogue with, most of them of course being UK and European. And we sent them the brief for our monoshell chair, really pushing everybody down the route of giving us concepts back that were truly distinctive, were truly instantly recognizable. And it turned into a pretty painful process, all in all. We'd certainly confirmed that most product designers are absolutely crazy. And we got ourselves into some really meandering discussions around what was appropriate and what wasn't appropriate. Most of the concepts that came back had some merit. Some of them were truly awful. But whenever we started testing these in front of most of our clients, the response on the whole was lukewarm, and it really just drew attention to our initial instinct on this brief, which was that it was going to be really difficult in order to create something that was truly different. John Bennett and Giovanni Agnolo, both based in Milan. John, an English guy, and Giovanni, native Milanese. They've been working together for, on and off for more than 10 years. Giovanni principally within Claudio Bellini's studio, and John as principal product design lecturer at the Milan University, and then go right back to the 80s, work for people like Sotsas in the Memphis studio. So there was pedigree there, and immediately as soon as they started putting pencil to paper, there were interesting flowing forms that were coming from the work that they were showing us, and forms that we were drawn to above and beyond that of which any other designer that was contributing did at that time. Giovanni especially was interested in the form of the old kind of Robin Day polypropylene school chair as we had over here in the UK. I think it was a global concept since the kind of the 50s and through the 60s, and the idea of this hole in the back, this halo, which was really present right from almost the first sketch concepts that we put down. We started working on these really highly defined plastic forms, and the idea, if you look at the rear 3/4 of the shot that's there, the way that the seat then flows through into this kind of framework creation in the backrest that allows us to get a lot of strength into the single shot molding, whilst keeping the amount of plastic through the center really very slim, and therefore also increasing the quality of that piece of plastic. So we're a prototype heavy business, and I can't tell you for certain how many times we looped the prototype, refine, update the CAD, prototype, refine, update the CAD, but you know, certainly more than 20, could even be more than 30. When you start off a process like that, of course, there are big leaps of changes being made each time you do it. And the more times you go round it, the smaller and smaller and smaller those refinements become, until you end up having stand-up arguments about, you know, about a millimeter here and there, and whether you can still see a blend through from one surface to another. But it's ultimately a really gratifying process, and one of my favorite parts of the job that I do. So we got to the point where we had a shell that we were really pretty happy with, a shell that sat well, gave a high level of comfort, could give us the strength and flexibility that we needed to give us something that was ergonomically sound, but also something that would pass BIFMA. And then, of course, turned our attention to refining and finalizing the bases on which this product would be made available. Now here you see the basic kind of stacking work cafe chair with the addition of an upholstered pad on the seat, on the sled frame, but then taking it right the way across to something that could be put into both workplace and educational on a 5-star base or 4-star base with a tablet. And this kind of high-pitched 4-star base, one of my favorite parts of the series, with the aluminium spider above it. Now, we benefited from a change in the criteria of the BIFMA testing around this. So for as long as I've been in the furniture industry, the static load testings on aluminium 4-star or 5-star bases has always been 1.1 tons, which everybody's always felt and made vocal about the fact that it was an excessive load to have to apply to anything. And one that had always meant that when we created bases like this in the past, they'd always been slightly fatter, slightly chunkier than we'd set out wanting them to be. So 18 months ago, the 1.1 tons was reduced to, I think, 750 kilo, 3/4 of a ton. And that, in fact, makes the difference between having something that looks a little too chunky and something that actually looks as slim and refined and complementary to the really slim plastic shell that you're going to place on top of it. Now, we were one of the first companies to benefit from this change in ruling, and just the place that we were on our project playing out meant that we were able to take material out of the thickness of the part and really land that, pass all the tests, and get something out there which, compared to almost everything else that's in the market, just looks so much more lightweight, but still has a massive margin of safety against it. So here you see tilt mechanism, and then the loop arm. At this point, you're really starting to create something which is suitable for for a desk chair, something that you can really sit and work in. As far as the colors of everything that we're showing you are concerned, there's 8 colors that we've chosen to be Boss standards. That'll be reviewed from year to year. Each time we change the price list, we'll also start to look at which colors have sold well and which haven't, which colors have kind of been appropriate for the market that we've been in, and which may be appropriate for the market that we're entering. So those 8 colors, or some of those 8 colors, may change from year to year. But as things stand, every plastic shell and every frame is available in those 8 colors. There's much wider collateral on the website, including interviews with Dave Bonniwell, who's the design lead from Boss on this project, and John and Giovanni on our website. And Kerry will be feeding you with more collateral to support the kind of story that we're telling today at a later hour. So we got to the point where...
Sorry, just before you kind of go into the Ola story, if anyone's got any questions that they want to ask, please put them in the Q&A or put them in the chat, and we'll keep them for the end, and I'll relay them to Mark to answer at the end. Okay, thanks.
Cool. So Saint was underway. We'd settled on a supply chain, which in this case was Italian. Steel was being cut, ready to start injection molded plastic parts, and we were really pretty happy with the chair that we'd created. So all was well, yeah, except kind of felt like, having just developed a monoshell, I was in a really strong position to develop a monoshell. It felt like I'd learnt my trade and really got under the skin of the project, gathered massive amount of feedback from the market, and there was still an itch there that felt like it needed to be scratched. We're really proud of Saint, and initial sales indicate that it's going to be a massive success, but still there were things that were immediately obvious that Saint couldn't do, that we may be able to create another shell that could do. So in practical terms, things like having the hole in the back mean that you can't create a full liner in upholstery, or a fully upholstered kind of version of the chair. From a materials basis, you can't do anything with that shell apart from shoot it as a single shot injection molding. And then aesthetically, the conversations that we'd had around something that was instantly recognized, or something that which was so highly defined, which we'd had so often, couldn't kind of be brushed away, if you like. For every client that we put Saint in front of, who absolutely loved the product, we would have just as many people that we put the product in front of, and they were either lukewarm about it or they didn't like it. And I suppose that's, therein lies the problem. When you try and create something that's radically different to everything else, you end up creating something that we refer to as a Marmite product here in the UK. So I think you have Marmite in the US. It's some gacky yeast extract product. You spread it on your toast as it comes off it's a byproduct of the beer brewing process. But Marmite is how we describe something where just as many people that you find love it that hate it. And there was an issue potentially with the accessibility of the aesthetic around what we'd created in Saint. So having now become so familiar with the monoshell market and everything that Saint was going to compete against, we really flipped the brief on its head. And rather than setting out to create something that was radically different to everything else that was out there, we just set a different criteria. This time we just wanted to create something that was better than everything else that was out there. And better for us was broken down into something that ergonomically was better than everything else, something that from a comfort perspective was better than everything else, something from a quality of components was better than everything else, and then underlining all of that with a breadth of choice in both kind of bases and finishes that was better than everything else. And as soon as we did that, as soon as we decided that that's how we wanted to move forward, actually the Ola project moved exceptionally quickly. So, bearing in mind that Saint was already, the tools were already being cut by then, and we'd gone through a year's worth of concept development, Ola and Saint basically kind of landed at the same time in terms of their market readiness. Wolfgang Metzger, German chap, late 60s. We'd worked with him, on some concepts before, but we'd never had anything that actually came through to fruition, anything that came right through to hit the market. But, difficult character to work with. So I kind of almost avoided, building a kind of a partnership with him before. But undoubtedly the philosophy on which he works, which is not to be radically different, but just to be better than everything else that's come before, dovetailed completely with what we were thinking now that we needed to do. So, a couple of days in Germany, and suddenly we had a shell which, for all intents and purposes, just needed validation. So, if we go through those kind of those three main topics again, so ergonomically, better than everything else. In fact, before I get into that, so we benchmarked what we considered and what our clients had been name checking as their preferred shells that were in the market. So we went out and we spent some money, and we bought the Howl chair and the Eames DSW from Vitra. We bought Casper and Kin from Alamure, Katifa, which of course it was the world's best-selling premium quality monoshell chair, Chroma from Brunner, and Mari from Hayworth. All of these had beaten us in projects over the kind of preceding few months, and all of which were seen as being really high quality products within the market. And then we started to judge those products on their ergonomic quality, on their comfort, and on the breadth of the range that could be offered from there. And then the kind of the real geeky stuff, like the quality of the plastic moldings themselves. How true were these shapes and forms, and how much witnessing from the manufacturing processes were there for architects and designers to point out. So it became a simple exercise for them. So ergonomically, we wanted something that had a better kind of controlled flexibility than that which we were dealing with. It's something that wasn't, a work chair that would been kind of, hashed up from a work cafe chair, but something that was really supportive and comfortable to work in, with or without a tilt mechanism. The angle of the back, from a comfort perspective, we wanted something with better pressure distribution than anything else that we'd looked at. Something with a higher back, which was most people's kind of gripe with the Katifa product. Something that with a really deep dish through the seat, but also through the backrest. Real deep curves coming through from side to side. A generous waterfall on the top, and then a really soft edge detail. From a component quality perspective, we looked at how we could overcome the competing forces of plastic injection molding. Principally with a component like this, of course, you're trying to create a component that's as slim as possible, that's as elegant as possible. You need that controlled flexibility, but you've got to pass BIFMA, so you need all of the strength in there. And you end up with a situation where, in order to get the strength, you need to put glass fiber into the plastic. But of course, the more glass fiber you put into the plastic, the worse your surface quality becomes, because all the fiber rises. You get fountains looking, especially in the dark colors, you get a lot of flecks. It stops you from creating a really good flat matte color across the range of the piece. So we went to a company that shoots plastics for automotive, and use it's what they call a mono-sandwich injection molding process. Now, we'd shot two different materials through two different nozzles into an injection mold tool before, but we'd never shot two different plastics through the same nozzle into the same cavity before. So in simple terms, you shoot a pure polypropylene, or almost pure polypropylene, in first, and then you follow it up with a high glass fiber, 40% glass fiber content polyprop. That glass fiber content pushes the pure material out to the wall of the tool and gives you the pure material where you need it on the outside, and gives you all the glass fiber on the core where you need it for the strength. So I urge you, as an important part of the selling process for this product, to try and encourage your clients to line up our monoshell against that of the competition, and to really look closely at the quality of the piece of plastic that we've created, the true quality of the color in the shells that we're putting forward compared to those which we're competing against. And this chair is so deep dish, is so comfortable through the seat and back, that I challenge anybody to choose an alternative shell when it's part of a lineup with our competitors. So part of the key to selling, I think, or converting good quantities on this product is going to be availability of samples and making sure that we get our clients to put their bums on the seat. So where Saint was about being distinctive, and definitely there's some fun to be had there. You know, Ola is much more about credibility, refinement, and accessibility from a visual perspective. Of course, we can also come back now to some of the limitations of Saint that, from a breadth of choice perspective, we were keen to overcome with Ola. So, you know, to start with, from a material perspective, there's a whole area of the market who want timber on their shell rather than plastic. So, okay, as soon as you've got no hole in the back, even with a real deep dish shell like this, you can create that. And importantly, by using the 3D veneer layup that we do now, you can create something in the timber shell, which is just as flexible as the plastic shell. So you don't have to lose any of that comfort and that ergonomic quality that we created in the plastic. You can also, of course, then start to throw greater levels of fabric onto this. So you can take that plastic shell and then you can either do a full liner through the seat and back, leaving exposed material at the rear, or you can fully upholster that product. There are some limitations to what you can do with that. Vinyls aren't working so well, so we're doing a kind of a much bigger fat boy version of this at the moment with a much thicker foam on the seat and back, where we can introduce a longer vinyl list. But from a fabric perspective, we've got a really nice choice of finish that we can lay up against this. And then you see it in its kind of its entry level sled frame and kind of most basic work cafe form, if you like. Super slim and super elegant, real good reliable stacking chair. So oak and walnut being the materials we'll focus on. And then, of course, what's come to the fore over the last few weeks is that Ola makes a really nice home office product, as well as a workplace kind of touchdown and meeting chair. We've learned a lot about home working over the course of the last few weeks. And principally, we've got clients that fall into two categories. Those who have health and safety and insurance liabilities that mean that the chair that they provide for their employees to use at home has to be a fully ergonomic, fully adjustable 8-hour task chair, G1 compliant. But then also a huge amount of companies who are leaving it to their employees to give them a budget to source a piece of furniture that suits their needs, and importantly, aesthetically, something that they want in their house, because there's a massive pushback against the aesthetic on an operator chair. So the take up on Ola as a home office working chair has been really pleasing. That's the liner version with the generous upholstery. And then some of the details of the range. And detail, I guess, is where to leave it on this. We're really proud of both chairs. There's a really confident statement from a company that puts two monoshells into the market at the same time. Yes, of course, there's a bit of crossover in the functionality of both of them, but also we're finding that aesthetically, we're catering for two very different tastes. And in terms of the ways in which these can be dressed up, there's not much that either one of these chairs can't do. Pleased to say we are getting some orders through as well, where clients are ordering both chairs on the same project to use in different areas of the workplace and different functions. But you know, everything that we've learned from our upholstery experience transfers so nicely into these non-upholstered products. That same level of care, the same level of detailing, and the fact that we can take our masterclass of tailoring and still transfer it to these much smaller footprint products. There's the old boy himself. That's Wolfgang Metzger. There's an interview with him that Kerry's going to be working on shortly. He's always got a few things to say, and that takes us into some of the additional collateral that Kerry's making available.
Okay, just before we kind of go on to the additional collateral that we've got lined up to help everyone, I'm just going to launch a quick poll if I can. So you should be seeing a question now. So what environment do you see Ola being most popular in your sectors? If you can make a little choice, and we'll glean a little bit of information of where you can see this being sold. I'll give us a couple of seconds to have a little bit of a think. Coming in thick and fast now. Everyone's making up their decisions. Okay. Well, interestingly, I think there's a couple more coming in there. We've got one other. If you put other in there, please do put on the list where you think that will be going. Okay, so we're finishing up with Work Cafe at 63%, Education coming in with 5%, Collaborative Spaces 26%, and Other on 5%. I am intrigued what the other could be. Okay, thank you, everyone.
So what was meeting? Sorry, Kerry.
Meeting, no one thought it was going to be a meeting
Nobody.
Chat. Yeah, most popular. It's probably just going to be number 2 on everyone's list.
Yeah.
Okay, so on the website at the moment, we've got, we've been filming a series of designer stories to go along with a lot of our kind of key products. We've got one for Saint and Ola, and if you look in the insights section on the website, you'll notice there's a good raft of other stories around some other products too. So from Mango to Entente, and we've also sort of worked into some sort of other topics that we're interested in. So we've got some talking about manufactured customization, why we design so many products with so many different options, and talking about the quality and the detail that we love to pour into our products as well. Hopefully these assets can help you and your sort of customers understand where we're coming from and the processes that we go through and the time and effort that we take to kind of get there. If you could skip on for me, Mark. So in our resource library as well, we're using Box that we've set up. There's a full suite of imagery, brochures, 2D and 3D collateral there for you, along with a set of presentations that hopefully you'll be able to pick up and pull apart and put into your own presentations as you see fit. If there's anything else that you feel like you need from us, please let us know and we can do everything we can to try and help that. But there's a well-organized resource library there, which I believe you've all been invited to join, that we hope will be of huge benefit to you. And on the next slide, some of the workplace insights that we talked about. So collaboration and focus was the other one, Work Cafe again, and refined upholstery. Some of our thoughts around the process, so you just get to hear Mark spouting off for another 2 minutes or so, but it's good stuff and it helps us develop that insight. Some interactive showrooms, yes. So as luck would have it, in this time of uncertainty where we can't use our showroom, we've got an interactive showroom experience from the London showroom. So it's using the Matterport functionality. I'm not sure if you've used that before, but feel free to kind of get on there. You can explore the London showroom, check out the products. Each one of the products has got the full spec of what you're looking at on there and a little bit of the story around the product. And if there's a video to go with that product as well, there'll be a video there too. So you should be able to explore the showroom, understand what's in there, and sort of glean any other bits of information from that. We will be developing all of our showrooms in the same way. So from Manchester, Dubai, Chicago, and maybe even High Point as well. Okay, do you want to scoot on? Oh, that's an example of how it looks. So that's our beautiful space. So if I've got any other questions, and now's the time to ask Mark. So let me have a look. Any chance a liner will become available on the poly shell in addition to the timber? So is there going to be a liner on the poly shell? You're muted, Mark.
You see, no matter how many times you do this. Yes, we're working on it at the moment. So yeah, it was one of the, as soon as you go out and you say this thing does everything, someone points out something that it can't do. And there is a market out there for a liner with a plastic exposed back. So it's in process, and it won't be long before we can add it.
Okay. How high do the chairs stack?
On the ground, 6 is what we've tested to. 8 looks and feels pretty secure to me. There's also a trolley, though, that we're making available, which will be a trolley that does both Ola and Saint. And on the trolley, they'll go 20 high.
Okay. Good things. We've got some endorsement from Margarita here. Oh, have I got 2 questions? If you've got any other questions, please do say. Oh, how many stack with seat pads? Oh.
So in practical terms, exactly the same number as those that I've already quoted. So 6 on the ground is no problem, and 20 on a trolley is no problem. The however to that is some fabrics mark, and some fabrics leave an impression when you get a lot of weight bearing down on them. So I don't think at this stage that we should be making the upholstered versions of the chair available on the trolley as high density. If we do, we're going to have to be very careful about the testing of the fabrics to make sure that we don't end up in a position where we've got a liability on that. Anything that's a vinyl or a polyurethane is especially an issue.
Okay. John would like to know about the bar stool options for Saint and Ola, because they are different.
So the bar stool option on Saint, we set out, well, with especially from our educational clients, really, that everybody was insisting that we should have a stacking bar stool. So Saint was made available on the sled frame that you see there, and it does stack. So it's very practical. However, from that is, of course, as soon as it's a stacking frame, it's a rather large footprint. And when we looked at doing the same thing with Ola, which is an altogether bigger shell than Saint, the size of the tower that you start to get beneath it just didn't, to my mind, look as elegant as it needed to do justice to the product. On the basis that Saint already stacked as a bar stool, we then took the decision to do Ola as a non-stacking bar stool. So although there isn't a visual in this presentation, we can make a visual available to you all afterwards. And I guess there's stuff on the website, Kerry.
Yes.
But it's a 4-leg that comes up as a central position to meet underneath the seat, and then there's a circular foot ring on it. We've already had inquiries for US customers at what you guys call counter height. Is that right, Rob? So it's like 4 inches lower than that which we would normally do at kind of European bar height. So we'll make those frames available at both heights.
Okay, so the product insights are all on the website at the moment. If they're not on box, then I will make sure they're on box straight after this. Do we have any other questions? Okay, I'm going to quickly see if I can put a poll together. I'm not entirely sure I can. Okay, so if with a show of hands, does everyone know how to raise hands? Could you all raise your hand, please, if you think people would be more interested in the upholstered version? Okay, is that everyone? So I got Magna, Grant, Austin, Kiki, and Rebecca. I'm presuming from that response, the rest of you think that the plastic option will be more popular. Thanks very much for that. Okay, and one final question for you all, if there's nothing else coming through. I'm going to just wanted to check with you all. Is this a good time for everyone to meet? So if you like.